From 0 to 3 kids, our unexpected adoption story. So I guess it all really started when Julia and I hit that weird part of our 30s where it felt like life was steady but also kind of paused, you know? We were living in the suburbs just outside Portland, not exactly the most exciting place on earth, but we loved it. Coffee shops on every corner, trees that actually change color in the fall, neighbors who wave when they walk their dogs. That kind of vibe. I work from home doing graphic design stuff, and Julia's in marketing, fully remote too. So yeah, lots of time at home, together, in our little 2-bedroom ranch with a vegetable garden that only half cooperates, and a cat named Pickles who pretty much runs the place. We'd been married almost 10 years by then. Tried for kids, obviously. Doctor visits, specialists, acupuncture, fertility diets, all of it. We even did the thing where we lit some weird-ass herbal candle a friend swore would clear the womb energy or something. Spoiler, it didn't. After a while, we just kinda stopped chasing it. I think there was this silent agreement between us, like we were tired of being disappointed. But that didn't mean we stopped wanting to be parents. A few years ago, Julia dragged me to this fundraiser for a local children's shelter. I thought it was just going to be one of those wine and cheese things where people pretend to care and then go home and forget about it. But that night, it hit different. We listened to a former foster kid speak, and man, I still remember what he said. Sometimes you don't need a perfect home. You just need someone to keep the light on for you. I don't know why, but that line cracked something open in both of us. We started volunteering at the shelter once a month. Nothing huge. Just helping out with events, wrapping Christmas gifts, baking cookies, that kind of stuff. Then once a month turned into every other weekend. Then every Saturday. Then some weekdays too. It stopped being a volunteer gig and started feeling more like part of our life. The kids there? They're not what people expect. They're not troubled or damaged or any of the crap you hear from people who've never actually sat down and talked to one. They're just kids. Some are shy. Some are loud. Some tell the worst knock-knock jokes I've ever heard in my life, but they all want the same basic stuff. Attention, safety, someone who listens when they talk about their day. I think the moment we knew we were ready to do something bigger was this one afternoon. It was raining, because of course it was. It's Portland. And this little girl, she couldn't have been older than 5, came up and just sat next to Julia on the bench while she was reading. Didn't say anything. Just leaned into her like they'd known each other forever. Julia looked at me over the top of her book, and I swear I could read it in her eyes. We could be that for someone. It wasn't an easy decision. We spent months talking about it, like real, ugly, honest conversations. What if the kid hates us? What if we screw it up? What if we fall in love and then lose them? But then Julia said something I'll never forget. She said, we can't save every kid, but we can save one. And that kind of became our North Star. We signed up for foster adopt classes. 12 weeks, every Wednesday night in a beige room that smelled like old coffee and those little plastic chairs that squeak every time you move. We learned about trauma bonding, de-escalation, attachment theory, court processes, more than I ever thought I'd need to know. We role-played how to respond to a tantrum without yelling, how to introduce a new routine without triggering anxiety, how to say I love you without expecting it back. And all the while we were still scared. Like, what if we weren't enough? What if we weren't patient enough? Or cool enough? Or strong enough? But then there'd be moments, like when we saw a kid light up because someone remembered their birthday, or when we helped a teenager write a resume for their first job, and it'd remind us why we were doing this. We finished our training and filled out what felt like a million forms. Background checks, home inspections, financial statements, references. They asked stuff like, what age range are you open to? And would you consider siblings, and how do you discipline? We were super honest. We said we were hoping to adopt one child, maybe 6 to 9 years old. Not a baby, not a teen. Just someone still young enough to believe in magic but old enough to tell us when they're hungry. We had just finished dinner when Julia's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, mouthed, "It's her," and picked up, putting it on speaker. It was our caseworker. Her voice was calm but carried a kind of quiet urgency. She said, "We have a boy. His name is Jacob. He's 8 years old. Quiet, polite, a little withdrawn, but very sweet. He loves to draw. I thought of you both immediately. Would you be open to meeting him?" Julia and I just looked at each other. We didn't even need to talk it out. We both said yes at the same time. 2 days later, we were pulling into the shelter parking lot with a bag full of stuff Julia had packed like we were visiting a 5-year-old going to summer camp. Some colored pencils, a sketch pad, a book about dogs, a stuffed wolf, and a giant chocolate chip muffin, which we later found out he didn't even like. Kid was all about peanut butter. Jacob was sitting at a tiny plastic table when we walked in, totally focused on his drawing. He barely looked up when the caseworker brought us over, just gave this tiny polite nod and said, "Hi," like we were some neighbors stopping by to borrow sugar. We didn't push, just sat near him and made small talk. Julia asked what he was drawing, and he held up this rough sketch of a dog with massive ears. "That's Rocket," he said quietly. "If I ever get a dog, I'm naming him Rocket." Julia smiled and told him it was a perfect name. I told him I liked how he shaded the fur. He didn't really react, just went back to his drawing. But when we left, he stood up and said, "Thanks for coming," in the softest voice. And I swear, that one line stuck with me the whole ride home. We started visiting every week after that. Sometimes we played Uno or built stuff out of Legos. Sometimes we just sat and watched him draw. Slowly, like a faucet with a rusty handle, he opened up. He told us about his favorite animal shows, how he liked wolves because they stuck together, said his friends used to call themselves a pack. That was the first time he mentioned Emma and Noah. He said their names like they were part of him. "Emma likes bunnies. Noah's funny. He makes me laugh when I'm sad." Then he went right back to his drawing like he hadn't just casually dropped two of the most important people in his life into the conversation. We asked the caseworker later, and she explained they'd come into care around the same time, not biological siblings, just kids who bonded fast. Different foster homes kept splitting them up. Nobody could take all three, but they were inseparable when they were together. Still, we kept our focus on Jacob. We were building something real with him. After a couple months, we moved on to supervised outings, walks in the park, lunch at a diner, a little zoo trip where he barely smiled but never let go of Julia's hand. Then came the overnights. The first one was tense. Jacob was polite to a fault, always said "excuse me" and "thank you." Sat straight on the couch like he was waiting for permission to relax. He barely touched the mac and cheese we made. Just quietly asked where the bathroom was and then came out 10 minutes later with his hands washed and sleeves rolled up like he was about to serve dessert. And hey, I get it. Some people might be thinking, wait, they just let you take a kid home? Like overnight? Isn't that kind of wild? And honestly, yeah, it sounds wild when you say it like that, but there's a whole process behind it. This wasn't us showing up with cookies in a car seat like, "Hop in, kid." We'd already been through months of training, background checks, home inspections, interviews where they asked questions I didn't even know had answers. Everything from how we handle conflict to what kind of cleaning supplies we use. And even after all that, these overnight visits were part of what they call pre-placement, kind of like test runs, but with actual humans and real emotions. The caseworker had to approve every single one. We weren't just winging it. They don't mess around when it comes to this stuff. It's all about making sure the kid feels safe and the match makes sense before anything becomes permanent. But the second time? He brought one of his drawings. A picture of a dog curled up on a porch with stars overhead. He taped it to our fridge without asking. Just did it. And I swear Julia got teary-eyed pretending to look for juice. The third visit, he helped make scrambled eggs. The fourth, he asked if he could leave his toothbrush in the bathroom so he didn't have to keep packing it up. That one hit me hard. Like, he was starting to believe he had a place here. A real place. After that, things moved fast. Paperwork, more meetings, official approvals. And then, he moved in. Julia made a welcome banner, which looked more like something from a middle school science fair. But he smiled when he saw it, and that was all that mattered. His room had technically been ready for weeks. Bed, dresser, bookshelves, all the basics checked off for the home inspection. He'd already slept there during the overnights, but this time, it was different. Julia had gone full-on Pinterest the night before. She switched out the old neutral bedding for this wolf-themed comforter set after remembering how much he talked about wolves. She put up a couple of his drawings we'd secretly saved and framed, added a little corkboard with his name on it, even left a jar of peanut butter cups on the desk. When Jacob walked in, he stopped in the doorway like he was trying to make sure he wasn't dreaming. His eyes went straight to the bed. "The wolves," he said, real quiet. "That's for me?" Julia nodded. "Yeah, Rocket's whole pack is here," she joked, and he gave the tiniest smile. Then he saw the framed drawings and just froze for a second. "You kept those?" I said. "Of course we did. You made this room yours way before today." He didn't say anything back, just went over to the bed and sat down slowly like he didn't want to mess anything up. Then he looked at the wall and said, "It looks like someone wants me to stay," and man, I had to pretend I was suddenly super interested in adjusting the blinds just so I didn't get choked up. He didn't cry, he didn't do the whole movie scene breakdown, but in his own way, in that quiet little sentence, I knew he felt it. Like he belonged here, for real. Not visiting, not temporary, home. The first few weeks went smoother than I expected, honestly. Jacob was polite, quiet, kept his room tidy, always helped set the table without being asked. He was the kind of kid who thanked you just for making spaghetti. But even with all that, there was something. I mean, we weren't Nave. We knew this wasn't a movie. And trauma doesn't just vanish because someone gives you a themed comforter and your own toothbrush. There were little things. He'd wake up super early and sit fully dressed on the edge of the bed, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to just relax. He always asked before opening the fridge, even for water. He didn't complain about anything, like nothing. Not even when I accidentally made scrambled eggs with almond milk that tasted like sadness and regret. He just powered through it with this weird smile like, "Thanks for the effort, dude." And he always spoke about my friends. Not new school friends, but Emma and Noah. Emma loves purple. She used to wear this glittery headband even when she slept. Noah always got in trouble for making fart noises in class. It was constant. Like they were still right there with him. Julia asked him once, "Do you miss them a lot?" And he said, "Well, yeah, they're my family." And that word hit different. Family. Not friends. Family. At first I thought maybe he was just close with them, like foster siblings. But the more he talked about them, the clearer it got. They were his anchor, his safe zone, his whole world, and now they were gone. Not dead, just elsewhere. We didn't push, we just let him talk when he wanted. But sometimes, especially at night, you could feel it, that quiet kind of sadness that sits in the corners of the house and doesn't make a sound, but still fills the room. We talked to his caseworker, tried to understand more. She confirmed it. Emma and Noah were still at the same group home. Jacob had come in with them, and yeah, they weren't biological siblings, but they'd been placed together almost from day one. They were what the system calls a, quote, bonded group. The only reason Jacob ended up with us, and not with them, was because no one had stepped up to take all three. And the longer they waited, the higher the chance they'd be separated forever. It wasn't anyone's fault, just numbers and logistics, and all the horrible math of the foster system. Julie and I had a lot of late-night talks around then, like real deep-in-the-weeds kind of talks. Do we regret this? No. Are we enough for him? I don't know. Are we trying our best? Yeah. But is it enough? We weren't sure. We even brought him to a child therapist who specialized in grief and attachment trauma. The woman was gentle, patient, and really good at making Jacob feel comfortable. After a few sessions, she sat us down and said, "He's not acting out, but he's not attaching either. He's holding back, because in his mind, if he lets go of Emma and Noah, he's losing them forever. And if he fully lets you in, then he's betraying them, his heart split in two." And that hit like a brick to the chest. Because we weren't trying to replace anyone, we just wanted to be asterisk also. Not instead. We didn't make any decisions right away, but I could feel Julia's gears turning. She started asking questions, looking things up, talking to other foster parents online. I caught her one night on the couch with her laptop, tabs open about sibling reunification and large family adoptions. I sat down next to her and said, "You thinking what I think you're thinking?" She said, "I don't know, I'm just trying to understand if it's even possible." I said, "We're barely getting used to one. You really think we can handle three?" She looked me dead in the eye and said, "I think he needs his people, and I think we need to figure out how to be part of that, not the wall between it." That was the moment I knew we were heading towards something big, not impulsively, not dramatically, but in that quiet, terrifying way where you realize your plan is no longer your plan, and your heart is about to call the shots. We started by asking his caseworker if it was even logistically possible. She was surprised, but not against it. She said it wouldn't be easy. We'd need a new home study. More training, legal paperwork, family assessments. The state doesn't love putting 3 kids with a couple that's never raised even one. There was the other big thing. Emma and Noah had started to form connections with other foster families. We'd be interrupting that. We weren't just saying we want them. We were saying we might be messing up someone else's chance at stability, so we asked to meet them, just to see. Julia said, "Let's not decide yet, let's just meet them. If it feels wrong, we'll stop." So that's what we did. One Saturday morning we drove to the group home. Jacob came with us. He had no idea what was going on, just thought we were visiting his old place. When we pulled into the parking lot, his face changed, like something in him woke up. He whispered, "Emma and Noah are still here?" Julia smiled and said, "Want to go see if they remember you?" He didn't wait. He ran. Flat out ran to the building like his legs knew the way without asking permission. And when that door opened, and those two little kids saw him and screamed his name and all three of them crashed into each other in this chaotic kid hug, I swear to God, I almost lost it. Julia did lose it. She cried right there in the lobby, no shame. And in that moment, watching those three cling to each other like the world had just come back into focus, I knew. We weren't done. Not even close. So yeah, after that day at the group home, there really was no going back. We sat in the car afterward, Jacob in the back seat grinning for the first time in, I swear, weeks, and Julia looked at me and just said, "Okay, so how do we make this happen?" And that was it. No dramatic music, no slow motion, just a choice made in a parking lot with fast food wrappers on the floor and crayon marks on the back of the seat. The next 6 months were basically paperwork hell, meetings with caseworkers, more parenting classes, updated home studies, interviews with a therapist, financial assessments, background checks again, because apparently the state thinks you might have picked up a felony in the last 6 months. We had to find a bigger house, obviously. The 2-bedroom we were in wasn't going to cut it, and the idea of bunk beds stacked like Tetris blocks made my back hurt just thinking about it. So we scrambled. Found a modest 4-bedroom place a little further out of town, with a small yard and a creaky porch that Julia fell in love with for some reason. We moved in while the adoption was still pending. Every week we had visits with Emma and Noah, at first supervised, then in our home, then overnight. It was like starting over, ×2. Emma was 6, wild and sparkly and always talking with her hands. Noah was 9, guarded but sharp, the kind of kid who watches everything and says nothing until he's absolutely sure of you. Those first few visits were sweet, but chaotic. We had to baby-proof again. We learned real quick that kids this age don't all eat the same stuff. Noah hated peanut butter. Emma insisted on cereal with no milk, like dry cereal, straight up like it was chips. Jacob was the bridge. He helped them feel safe. At night, all three would curl up in the same blanket on the couch, like a pack of puppies. I remember one night Noah fell asleep with his head on my arm, and I literally didn't move for like an hour because I didn't want to wake him up. It was the first time he'd touched me voluntarily. That stuff matters. Meanwhile, Julia and I were adjusting. I mean, we went from 0 to 3 kids in less than a year. We had no idea what we were doing half the time. Our house was loud, messy, full of tiny socks and rogue Legos and glitter in places where glitter should never be. The dishwasher never stopped running. We lost track of how many socks had no pairs. I started keeping wet wipes in my car like a dad cliche. But weirdly it felt like it made sense, like the house was too quiet before, and now it sounded like life. The official adoption day finally came. Courtroom, judge, papers, the whole thing. They let each kid pick out a little pin to wear. Emma chose a butterfly. Jacob wore a wolf, of course. Noah refused to wear anything but brought a Hot Wheels car in his pocket for luck. The judge asked us, "Do you understand the commitment you're making today?" And I said, "Yes, sir, we understand completely," and I meant it, not because we had all the answers, we didn't, still don't, but because after all of it, the heartbreak, the hesitation, the unknowns, it was crystal clear, these kids were our family. That night, back at home, we had pizza and cupcakes and let them stay up late watching cartoons. And at one point, I looked over and saw all 3 of them tangled together on the floor, laughing over something that made no sense, and I just thought, this is it. This is the good stuff, not the court date, not the paperwork, this. The loud, messy, completely bonkers real life. Do we still mess up? Oh yeah. All the time. I once packed Emma's lunch with someone else's sandwich because I was half asleep. Julia accidentally sent Noah to school in pajama pants. Jacob still gets quiet sometimes when he misses the early days. But now, when that happens, he's not alone. He's got a brother and sister, he's got us. And the love, Man, the love just keeps growing. We thought we were saying yes to one kid. We were scared but ready to give our whole heart to one. And then life handed us three. 3 times the laundry. 3 times the questions at bedtime. 3 times the sibling fights over who touched whose crayon. But also 3 times the hugs. 3 times the laughter. 3 times the purpose. So yeah, we wanted to give a kid a home. Instead, we got a whole damn family.